They know.
And presidential. Absolutely.
Keep on moving. Yeah. Stronger. Keep on moving. Stronger. Let's move.
Hello. How are you? Hello. How are you? Go to AFC. I'm going to Washington DC on the refinery. We do have, we always have money. Those people are here. Okay, that's good. Even now we're in touch with them.
His Excellency, the President of Kenya,
and lead us into vision that serves your purposes for justice, equity, and shared prosperity.
This is such a moment for Africa, because the Africa of tomorrow will not be shaped by hope alone. It will be shaped by what we build, by what we finance, what we connect, what we process, and how we choose to do that now. The Africa our children will inherit will not be the one we hope for. It will be the one that we've intentionally built. This summit is not only about infrastructure. It's about whether Africa will finally organize its resources, its capital, and its leadership to build economics that retain value, create jobs at scale, and become more resilient on our own terms. We must be able to show that regional projects move from concept to execution. We must be able to show that capital was mobilized for infrastructure, not merely discussed. We must be able to show that reforms advanced to unlock pension, insurance, and domestic institutional capital. We must be able to show stronger coordination around corridors, power systems, industrial platforms, and regional resilience. And we must be able to show that this summit did not end in Nairobi, it began in Nairobi. And when we meet again in 2028 for AFC at 21, we should not merely show or review intentions, we should measure the momentum of what we have built.
It is a privilege to be with you today as we open this inaugural summit anchored on infrastructure as the engine for industrialization, with the purpose of attaining the Africa we want through the Africa we build. The central question before us is not whether Africa should industrialize. It is whether we will organize our infrastructure, our capital, and our policies to make that industrialization inevitable. The status quo is that less than 35% of Africa's roads are paved, contributing to some of the highest logistics costs globally. Rail networks remain limited and often disconnected.
Ladies and gentlemen, Africa continues to face a persistent infrastructure financing gap with critical shortages in key sectors such as energy, transport, and digital connectivity. These gaps constrain economic growth, limit productivity, and slow our collective development ambitions. Kenya, like many countries across the continent, experiences similar infrastructure challenges, which remain a binding constraint to growth, even as our social sectors continue to require sustained and inclusive investment.
I dare say, ladies and gentlemen, we have this, in this room, we have the political leadership, we have the industrialists, we have the financiers to transform our continent, and we must waste no time looking any further. In Kenya, we have established a national infrastructure fund and are in the process of creating a sovereign wealth fund, following in the footsteps of some of our peers on the continent, including, I know, what has been done in Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, and in many other places. Through these instruments, we aim to mobilize public and private, as well as domestic and foreign capital, to fund major priority projects in the tune of $40 billion over the next decade. When you heard my minister here speak, he said, we already have mobilized $3 billion, just in a short span. And we are looking at the people in this room, how we are going to work together to leverage that money so that we can drive the issues we are discussing here. Infrastructure, transport, logistics, infrastructure. To my friend, the CEO of AFC, he did mention very clearly that we have some of the largest agricultural lands in our continent. How do we leverage on those? Why is Africa still a hungry continent? Why is Africa still defined by hunger and imports from all manner of places when we can do it right here? These are not merely national priorities. They are integral to the broader continental agenda of industrial transformation through manufacturing and value addition. For far too long, the economic destiny of our continent has been shaped by others. While historical injustices from colonialism to inequities in the global economic order are real, we must also acknowledge that other regions have faced similar challenges, but they have risen above them. We're not the only ones that have faced these challenges. We are constrained, however, only by the extent that we accept the status quo through acquiescence, complacency, and limited ambition. Transformation is neither accidental nor a miracle. It is deliberate, it is intentional, and it is entirely within reach if we have the resolve to pursue it, to reach higher, and to reject the average. This is our assignment. as the current generation of Africans, leaders, business people, entrepreneurs, this is our assignment. And this is the job that we must do without equivocation, without wavering, and without hesitation. It is now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank President Museveni for refusing to accept easy choices. He had a choice. He had a choice to allow the oil in Uganda to go the way others would have wanted. But I remember having a conversation with President Museveni, and allow me, Mzee, to say this. When I visited him once, and I asked him, Mzee, what's going to happen about the oil reserves that you have, because it's taken time. And I remember Mzee telling me, look, young man, then I wasn't even president. He told me, you see, some of these people you see here, if we give them a chance, they will sell this oil at a throwaway price and go and buy perfume. You know, those are his words, and they have never left my mind. You know, a case of people making shortcuts, easy decisions, you know, and in the process, sabotaging the destiny of a nation and a region. I am happy that we will be discussing how we are going to use our resources, whether it is the oil we have in our region or the minerals we have in our region, not to export to others, but to industrialize our own region, our countries.
I want to thank His Excellency President Ruto for organizing this conference, and the AFC for organizing it under the patronage of President Ruto. We have got a minister in Uganda, is called Otafuire. The Bantu ways of naming people, you gave a name which is actually a sentence. So Otafuire means that if you don't die, you will see good things in the end. Therefore, by not dying and having been involved in public affairs for the last 65 years, since 1960, I'm now going to beginning to see some waking up. When the manager from AFC was speaking, I said, this man is speaking my language now. And he's a bureaucrat. But he's speaking a language of revolution. This has been our problem. The discrepancy between revolution and betrayal, really, because Africa has been betrayed in the last 70 years. We should not look at these issues in isolated ways. This was the problem in the 1960s and even 70s. They would pick one item, rural development. Then they talk about that, talk about that, talk about that. Then after some time they say, oh, no, women empowerment. Then women empowerment. Then education. Then, just like that, is ideological orientation. Because we are talking of inter-regional infrastructure. But how will you have inter-regional infrastructure if there are wars going on? And these wars are based on ideological bankruptcy. In my view, I welcome these very good technical, professional ideas about infrastructure. But I think if we only focus on infrastructure alone, we may not go far. Because there are wars. There are wars in Congo, there are wars in South Sudan, there are wars in all these different places, Somalia. So how will you have infrastructure if people are fighting for wrong reasons? Because of number one, because of ideological fragmentation, then you end up with weak states. No army. Why is there insecurity in Africa? Some of these countries have no armies. Why don't they have an army? Because they cannot build one. Why? Because or ideology. Then you come to the underdevelopment of the human resource, education. There, many Africans have gone to school now. Many of them we have got more educated people than before. But they need these other factors. But in some cases, it is also what we are talking about now, the infrastructure, is number 4 here in this booklet. It is very true that if you don't have infrastructure, how will you have industrialization? How will you have modernization? Now, on infrastructure, we are moving very well now. From the comments of His Excellency President Ruto, from the comments of the AFC, we are all moving in the right direction. The only clarification I want to make is that there are core cost pushers. If you want your economy to succeed, you must identify the core cost pushers, which push costs in production. One of them is transport. Transport, especially the railway and the water transport. So if you build the railway, you must build it with either government money, who are not looking for high profits and quickly, or with patient capital, patient private capital. Because if you have got very high cost of transport, of the rail, how will you compete? How will you compete? How will the companies make money? The other cost pusher is electricity. In Uganda, my people behind my back, they made a mistake and they went with a group called what? I don't know what they called them. And they built a dam, one of the dams on the Nile, using private money. When it came to the price of the electricity, production was 16 cents per kilowatt hour. How can you make money? How can that electricity help the economy? Well, it almost caused a civil war because they didn't tell me, they went behind my back. But the dams were built with government money. We are able to produce electricity at 4.8 cents, American cents per kilowatt hour. Then the old dams, the ones we have already paid for, the cost is 1.2 cents, American cents. So there, you must be very careful. It must either be government money or patient capital, not people who are looking for quick money. Then the next, it is the railway and electricity and water transport. And then the cost of money in the banks. That's why in Uganda, I had to keep the Uganda Development Bank. I privatized the Uganda Commercial Bank because they persuaded me that they confused me. They said, if you privatize, private capital is efficient, they will do what? I said, okay, but you know, I am a bushman, so I go cautiously. So I said, okay, you take the Uganda Commercial Bank. They privatized it. The interest rate is now 25%. How can somebody, that's how you get what His Excellency was talking about, the perfume importers. They are the ones who make money from 25% interest loans. A manufacturer cannot make profit with 25%, or a farmer. So, rail transport, electricity, cost of money for manufacturing and agriculture. I would want you to look at it. The cost of labor is still not high. Cost of labor, the salaries are not still high. Those are not a problem. Now it comes now to the pipeline. I would not have bothered His Excellency Ruto so much for fuel, especially people who are driving on the road. If the fuel is expensive, don't travel, stay at home. Where are you going? I'm not really worried about you. What I was worried about was jet fuel. Because jet fuel is not only just for travel, it is for tourism. If the cost of the jet fuel is very expensive, the tourists will not come. It is for export, because the aircrafts also export. So that's why I had to disturb His Excellency Ruto that the governments need to keep a voice in the pipeline. The governments of Kenya, government of Uganda must keep a voice in the pipeline, mainly because for the jet fuel. People are going for nightclubs, I don't care so much about them. If you don't have the money, stay at home. Where are you going? So therefore, with the infrastructure, but for instance, for the roads, once we have got enough infrastructure of the railway and the water, because there's also water transport. Water transport, Lake Victoria, the River Nile, Lake Albert. Once we have those, the railway, electricity, for the roads, we can actually have toll roads. Yeah. That's what I'm telling our American friends. Come and make money on the toll roads. I will not welcome you in the railway if you are greedy for profits. But for the toll roads, you build the road and charge it. Those who can pay, those who can use the smaller national roads. So that's what I would say on the infrastructure. So therefore, when His Excellency Ruto recently sent me a message, I supported it, that the surplus oil, which we had given to Total to take through Tanga to I don't know where, be our contribution to the refinery in Tanga, number one. Then later on, we can add the petroleum from the other Congo, from South Sudan, and also these other provinces, because the one of Uganda, where we have the oil now, is only 40% of the Arbat area. There is another 60% which we have not which is not yet fully explored. So there's more oil in Uganda, both within Arbat and in the other provinces. So therefore, I support this idea of the Tanga refinery. We shall maintain our small refinery because we have already gone ahead. We are very far. We can't stop. The question is, how do you, those refineries, if you don't want to create a, kwa Kiswahili tunasema wivu, jealousy. Tunasema wivu, wivu. If you don't want wivu, it's better that if the countries have ownership together, like in, because that's what we were doing in the past. We were calling it East African Common Services. We were owning the ports together, East African harbors, East African Railway, East African Airways, East African Development Bank. It was all East African. If it is all ours, then it is ours. Then it is not either me or you. Hakuna kushindana. You are all together. So with these few words, you should be careful. Don't invite old men for. Don't give audience to old men, because you do so at your own risk. With these few words, it is now my pleasure to participate in the meeting.